Welcome back to the channel. Today, we re-diving into one of the most disturbing and emotionally devastating horror films of 2025. Bring Her Back, this Australian supernatural folk horror thriller, directed by the Philippou brothers, doesn't just rely on graphic violence and gore to terrify you. Instead, it deconstructs grief, trauma, and the dangerous obsession of a woman willing to break every moral boundary to undo the past. If you're a horror aficionado seeking intelligent, character-driven scares, this film demands your attention. So let's break down what makes Bring Her Back such a haunting cinematic experience. The narrative of Bring Her Back unfolds with deceptive simplicity before spiraling into psychological and supernatural chaos. We're introduced to Andy, a 17-year-old boy thrust into the foster care system, and Piper, his visually impaired stepsister. Their lives have been fractured by tragedy. Their father's sudden death in a domestic accident leaves them vulnerable and alone. Enter Laura, played with absolutely riveting intensity by Sally Hawkins. On the surface, Laura appears to be a compassionate foster guardian, welcoming, nurturing, and seemingly devoted to her new charges. However, as we progress through the narrative, we begin to uncover the sinister undercurrents beneath her maternal facade. Laura harbors a dark secret. Years before, she had a daughter named Kathy, who drowned in a swimming pool. This loss has festered in her psyche, transforming grief into obsession and obsession into something far more malevolent. She's become fixated on an ancient, ritualistic form of folk magic, a practice designed to resurrect the dead. And Andy and Piper, unfortunately, are at the center of her elaborate, horrifying plan. What unfolds is a taut psychological thriller that progressively descends into body horror and supernatural terror. The film doesn't just show us violence, it forces us to confront the psychological motivations behind it. Let's talk about Sally Hawkins. She's an Academy Award-nominated actress, and in Bring Her Back, she delivers what might be the most chilling, nuanced performance of her career. Hawkins doesn't play Laura as a one-dimensional villain. Instead, she constructs a deeply complex character, a woman oscillating between genuine maternal affection and unhinged psychological pathology. In one scene, she's tenderly braiding Piper's hair. In the next, she's engaged in ritualistic brutality that will make you recoil from your screen. What's particularly impressive is Hawkins' command of micro-expressions and vocal modulation. She communicates Laura's fractured mental state through subtle shifts in demeanor. A tremor in her voice, a predatory glint in her eye, the mechanical quality of her movements. Critics and audiences alike have rightfully praised her performance as a tour de force. One Rotten Tomatoes reviewer noted that the film's greatest horror emanates not from supernatural forces, but from Hawkins' unraveling portrayal of human monstrosity. This isn't just a horror performance, it's a masterclass in character acting. Barratt, who plays Andy, brings credibility to his role as a protective older sibling navigating the precarious balance between self-preservation and familial obligation. His performance anchors the emotional core of the narrative. We believe in his desperation, his resourcefulness, and ultimately, his vulnerability. But perhaps most noteworthy is Sora Wong's portrayal of Piper. Wong, who is herself blind, brings authenticity to the role that transcends typical Hollywood representation. She communicates emotion, fear, and resilience without relying on visual cues, instead utilizing her voice, physicality, and presence. This is her first feature role, and she proves herself to be a formidable talent. The chemistry between the ensemble cast is palpable. The tension between caretaker and charges, the unspoken understanding between siblings. All of it feels earned and genuine. The Philippou brothers Danny and Michael previously crafted Talk to Me, a lauded supernatural horror film that demonstrated their sophisticated understanding of visual storytelling and atmospheric tension. With Bring Her Back, they've evolved their craft considerably. The cinematography is methodical and deliberate. Every frame is compositionally precise. The production design of Laura's home, for instance, isn't merely a setting, it's a visual manifestation of her deteriorating mental landscape. Shadows dominate the aesthetic. Color grading emphasizes cold, desaturated tones punctuated by moments of sickly, organic color during the film's more graphic sequences. The sound design deserves particular commendation. It functions as an invisible character within the narrative, unsettling ambient drones, the subtle creaks of the house, the visceral quality of bodily deterioration. Combined with Jed Carazel's haunting orchestral score, the auditory experience creates profound unease. What's particularly impressive is the director's restraint in certain moments. They understand that what we don't see can be more terrifying than explicit imagery. There are cuts that imply horror rather than display it, creating psychological dread that lingers far longer than any special effect could achieve. Bring Her Back operates on multiple thematic levels, which is precisely why it transcends the limitations of conventional horror cinema. At its foundation is a meditation on grief. Laura's character is Uente simply a madwoman. She has a woman for whom loss has become an existential crisis. The film explores how unprocessed trauma can metastasize into pathology. Laura's descent isn't sudden, it's gradual. A slow erosion of moral boundaries, justified by maternal desperation. She tells herself a narrative that she's protecting these children, that the ritual will restore her daughter, that the sacrifices are necessary. The film brilliantly illustrates how individuals rationalize increasingly horrific actions when motivated by loss. Additionally, the narrative examines the vulnerability of children within systems designed to protect them. Andy and Piper are placed in state care ostensibly for their safety, yet this system has delivered them directly into danger. It asks a critique of institutional failure. The foster care system has an ability to adequately screen individuals and protect those most susceptible to exploitation. There's also a profound exploration of found family and sibling bonds. Despite the horror, the relationship between Andy and Piper feels authentic. Their mutual reliance and protection of one another provides a moral counterpoint to Laura's destructive family obsession. Finally, the film interrogates the nature of motherhood itself. Laura is simultaneously a caricature of maternal devotion taken to nightmarish extremes, and a disturbingly plausible portrait of how maternal ideology can justify violence. Yes, Bring Her Back is visceral. The film doesn't shy away from depicting graphic violence and body horror. But here's the crucial distinction. None of the gore feels gratuitous. The practical effects, and they are practical, not digital, are meticulous and thoroughly disturbing. Every moment of bodily trauma communicates narrative information and emotional consequence. This isn't torture porn. This is horror in service of thematic meaning. The filmmakers employ a sophisticated understanding of how to visually represent psychological deterioration through bodily imagery. The ritualistic elements of the folk magic are depicted with an unsettling specificity that suggests research and intent. When violence occurs, we understand its purpose within the larger narrative architecture. That said, this is unquestionably a difficult viewing experience. The MPAA rating of Unrated is wholly appropriate. This film is not designed for casual horror viewers or those with sensitivities to graphic content. It demands a mature, prepared audience. Despite its challenging subject matter and graphic content, Bring Her Back achieves significant commercial success. The film grossed approximately $39.1 million worldwide, against a production budget of roughly $15 million. A substantial return that affirms audience appetite for intelligent horror cinema. Critically, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film maintains an 89% critical approval rating, with critics universally praising its ambition and execution. The Metacritic score of 75/100 places it within the universal acclaim category. Reviewers have consistently highlighted Sally Hawkins' performance as many have argued that this role represents some of the finest acting work in contemporary horror cinema. The Philippou brothers have been recognized for their sophisticated directorial approach and their ability to balance visceral horror with philosophical inquiry. Audience reception has been similarly positive, with many viewers describing the film as a transformative and challenging cinematic experience. Social media discussions often center on the film's thematic complexity rather than its surface-level scares. While Bring Her Back is a remarkable achievement, it's not without its limitations. Some critics have noted that pacing falters in the third act, with certain narrative threads remaining unresolved or underdeveloped. The motivation for certain character decisions could have benefited from additional exposition. Additionally, the VHS tape framing device, which I won't elaborate on to avoid spoilers, struck some viewers as narratively unnecessary or weakly integrated into the overall structure. There is a debate within the film's audience about whether this element enhances or detracts from the core psychological narrative. Finally, the film's conclusion provoked polarized reactions. Some viewers found it to be thematically satisfying and emotionally resonant, while others perceived it as tonal shift that undermines the film's carefully constructed darkness. It's perhaps more hopeful than the preceding narrative prepares us to expect. These criticisms, however, are relatively minor within the context of the film's numerous strengths. They represent matters of artistic interpretation rather than fundamental failures in execution. So, should you watch Bring Her Back? The answer is an emphatic yes, with significant caveats. This is not entertainment in the conventional sense. It's a challenging, disturbing examination of grief, motherhood, and the capacity for human cruelty. It's intellectually sophisticated, emotionally devastating, and visually unflinching. If you approach cinema as an art form that should challenge, provoke, and disturb you, then Bring Her Back is essential viewing. However, if you watch horror films primarily for escapism or entertainment, this may prove too psychologically demanding. If graphic violence is a deal breaker, you should seek alternative recommendations. But if you value horror cinema not operates simultaneously as character study, psychological thriller, and philosophical inquiry, Bring Her Back is unquestionably a masterpiece. The Philippou brothers have demonstrated that they're not one-hit wonders. They've crafted a film that will remain in conversations about contemporary horror for years to come. Sally Hawkins delivers a performance that transcends genre and should be considered among the finest acting work of the year across all cinema. My final rating, 9.0 out of 10.0. Bring Her Back is essential viewing for serious cinephiles and horror enthusiasts willing to engage with genuinely challenging material. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into Bring Her Back. If this review resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel for in-depth analysis of contemporary cinema. Leave your thoughts about the film in the comments section below. I am particularly interested in hearing your perspectives on Sally Hawkins' performance and the film's thematic conclusions. If you've seen Bring Her Back, did you find it as transformative as I did? Or do you have reservations about its approach? Let's continue this discussion in the comments. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.